Hello. Charlie Newton here once again with Splash Live Art School. So we're going to have another class today. And in this class, I'm going to actually do a demonstration. I want you kids to, and from age 4 to 94, you can follow along with me. But I'm wanting to do a demonstration of how an artist would appropriate art from history, art from their culture, art from the past. So for the past few classes, we've been talking about Mark Rothko, Frank Smith, and Stanley Whitney. It was very important for me to talk about them because Mark Rothko and his crew during especially the 50s created this style called abstract expressionism. And this is when art became more than just a representation of an object. The artwork itself, the piece, the object became more important. Paint strokes, brush strokes, the viscosity of paint, how thick the paint is, how thin the paint is, the canvas, the rectangle of the canvas or the sheet of paper was all part of the art. And Mark Rothko did art that he considered spiritual. So we experimented with some of that. Then we also talked about Frank Smith, one of my mentors, who founded the Afro-Cobra School. I think that's important because that connects me with art in a real way. I met Frank Smith when I was a student at Norfolk State and Old Dominion University in Virginia. And so, we met, and I spent a lot of time in his studio. I spent a lot of time talking with him. And even though he wasn't my teacher per se, because Frank was then teaching at Howard University, I was influenced by the Afro-Cobra movement, which he helped to found. I was influenced by his pride in who he was as a black artist. Very important. And then we talked about Stanley Whitney, who is an African-American artist who's, right now his work is all over the world in every major museum. If your museum don't have a Stanley Whitney, your museum is not up on who they need to collect. And today what I'm going to attempt to do, I'm going to do a painting or a sketch or a painting. I don't know what it's going to be, but on paper, watercolor on paper. I may even use, yes, I think I may use pastels as well. And I'm going to show you how you can appropriate what you learn from art history. You can appropriate or use or utilize what you see in galleries and museums to enhance your own art so that you can express yourself. But so when I'm making my art, I have all of this art history that I've studied, all of this over the years and years, all the museums that I've visited in Europe and in America. All this is in my subconscious, and it informs me to help me to make good decisions. And I love it. I love being an artist. Every day I wake up and do what I love. And I've been blessed in that my entire life, the only job I've ever had has been in art. And 10 years ago, we decided to share art with kids who were low income and at risk. And so, let's get started. I don't know if I can talk you through this, but let's talk about Mark Rothko first. I'm going to start drawing. Mark Rothko was considered a spiritual artist. And of course, he lived in New York. He was part of the abstract expressionist movement. In the abstract expressionist movement, artists actually got together. And this is the difference. This is the difference between most African-American art. Not all, but now because things are changing. But I'll say African art. Let's go all back to Africa. African art was meant to be spiritual. It was spiritual, and it is spiritual. The art that's made to do something and not just be something beautiful to look at. But when the abstract expressionist artists got together, about 8 artists got together and decided that, they needed a way to survive. Listen closely. And so they worked together to form an art movement. Now, the art that I'm doing today is Charlie Newton's art, okay? It's Charlie Newton's art. It's not abstract expressionism. It is not Afro-Cobra. It's just Charlie Newton. My art is spiritual as well, but I use figures. But I can utilize some of the abstract expressionist techniques that I've learned, hopefully, to engage. So I'm painting a figure now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use crayon, all pastels, and I'm just sketching something in because I don't want this to be totally realistic, but I want you to know what this is. And you see how freely I'm sketching? Because I'm actually feeling my emotions now. I'm trying to make a statement about how I feel. And so that gets translated from my heart to my mind. And when it gets into my mind, I have a lot to work with. I have my subconscious mind, which helps me to memorize what's in some of the rudiments of art and what's going to be important to me. So I'm just trying to make it an expression, but what I'm really wanting to do is communicate with you guys, to how to appropriate, how to be influenced. I keep using big words, I know, but how to be influenced by other artists. Okay, and it's very important, I believe, for you to be aware of history. Okay, and that's what we want to preserve, especially for African American artists. We want to preserve our history so we can be influenced. So most of my art would have a figure, so I have an outline sort of a figure in here. But don't worry, we're going to paint this. Now, so I'm just kind of sketching in. I mentioned something about Rothko. Rothko would spend hours in his studio, and we have pictures of that. He would spend hours in his studio just contemplating what he was going to do. I said last time, it is okay for you to not actually be working on a physical piece in the studio, but if you're thinking about art, you're making art. If you're reading about art, you're making art. If you are visiting an art gallery or art museum, you are making art. And anytime you're making art, you're getting better. So now I'm just thinking about designs. I'm using flesh tones to sketch this in so that I can just paint over them when I want to, paint over it, and I won't have no problems. So this is going to be a mixture of Frank Smith, whose art was more like jazz or quilt making. So Frank and the Afro-Cobra artists borrowed from African art shapes. They went back to Africa, and actually they did a lot of exhibitions in Africa, and they traveled to Africa a lot. Hey, something interesting to note, that the Afro-Cobra movement was the art arm of the civil rights movement in Chicago. So the artists, see, artists, we use our art to fight for justice. So it makes sense to use whatever you are good at if you're going to fight for justice. Everybody's not going to be a politician. Everybody's not going to get out in the streets and march. Everybody can, but everybody's not going to do it. But for me, and since I was, say, 11th or 12th grade, I became interested in my community. And Splash is part of the community. We're doing Splash to help kids who want to be artists or who have talent and don't know what they want to be yet, to utilize their talents. What's wrong with that? And we need everybody to help us do that. We need the parents to help us. We need organizations to help us, to do that, to reach these kids. So when I was in 11th or 12th grade, I became influenced by politics of Black Panther movement and not only Black Panther movement, but the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I wasn't a preacher yet, so I was a Christian, but these people, they were fighting for our rights and talking different, so I became influenced with it. And my art turned to an art that would celebrate my culture and who I am, my blackness. So I'm allowing myself to be influenced not just by Western art, I'm trained in Western art, but also by art history that I had to research on my own because Black art wasn't taught at UTC when I went to UTC. I'm just saying, I'm just gonna tell the truth, I'm a person of truth. And Black art wasn't taught. So we didn't know who we were, and we weren't proud, and some of you guys aren't proud of who you are. But you need to be proud of who you are. So I've laid a sketch down. And this is, you see how it's just a sketch. I could have sketched this in pencil, but I didn't want to, because I don't want everything to be, the work that I'm doing now, I really don't want it to be so technically, astute. I want it to be more physical, more about brushstrokes. So I have taken into consideration this rectangle, the paper. The paper is my support or support system or foundation. I'll say support. So if you're going to build a house, the paper would represent the ground that you're going to build on. So there's stony ground, there's rocky ground, there's soft ground, there's, and it matters what type of soil you build your house on. It's the same thing with art. It matters what type of support that you use. So for this, I'm using, I think this is a 100-pound rag paper. And I know it's going to take a lot of water. It'll be able to, this is more than 100 pounds, as a matter of fact. This is more than 100 pounds. I can't see where I got this paper from, but it is at least, it's probably about 140-pound rag, rough, and cotton. And so it can take a lot of water. So I'm going to get my brush and I'm going to start blocking in. We always work from large to small. Always work from large to small. So let me show you the paints I'm using. I'll be using these tins here, and I'll be using tubes. And I just changed my mind about painting now. I think I'm going to block in some some colors with the pastel. I think I'm going to put a little bit more pastels on here because this is how I like to do it. So Frank Smith's work is more like African textiles, Southern quilt making. I don't think he's from the South. I'm not sure. I know he was raised in Chicago, but when I look at his work, it reminds me of quilts, Southern quilts. And he used jazz. So there's a lot of movement in his work. Rothko and Stanley is a black artist as well. Rothko is a white artist. And I think he may be out of Germany, Rothko. I need to find out. I can't remember. But their works, they use more squares and blocks. Their work is more classical abstraction, I would say, classical. Now, if you don't know anything about African art, one might think that Frank Smith's work is classical abstraction as well, but it's not. And the reason why it's not is because the Western European idea of abstract art, this is just my opinion, by the way, is more about its objectivity. In other words, it don't have to mean anything. It's physical, it's about what you see only, and material. Whereas the African approach is more about, it's really spiritual, but it's not just internal. It's about spirituality having an effect on the entire community. And that fits with my art, because I want my art to have a positive effect on the community. And that's why we do splash, and that's why I make the type of paintings that I make. So even though the art may look similar, it's come from a different place. So when one looks at Frank Smith's work, you can see the African influence. By the way, one thing about Afro-Cobra, and it sounds like a commercial for Afro-Cobra. I don't think your art have to have meaning, but I think that my art has to have meaning. So your art can be anything you want it to be. But for me, because of the situation that we find ourselves in, being black people, it's hard for me to do art that don't have meaning. So, but that's up to the individual, what you want to do with your work. So whereas the art is its own meaning in abstract expressionism, and I am not a critic, I'm not an art critic, I'm just an artist, but this is my take on it. The art is its own meaning. It's kind of like a religion to some people. Abstract expressionist art, and I'm pretty sure to Rothko, art is more like a religion. But to me, art is not a religion, but art can be used in religion. And that's more of an African way of viewing art. Art can be utilized to try to tell a story and to try to make something happen, again, to try to make something happen. I believe that, and I tell my students, I miss being in class with the students because we can give individual mentoring. And one of the things I try to stress, if you do your best, it's going to be art. Don't be lazy because it's you. Your art represents who you are. And if you don't respect your art, nobody else will. Mama won't, daddy won't. Sometimes we're lucky enough to have parents that understand, but because black artists haven't been accepted until recently, a lot of us don't understand the value of it, of art. But it's your expression of who you are, and it's very important. Nobody can do what you can do. Nobody can be who you are. Very important. Art is important all over the world. A couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, I was looking at an auction, and some art was selling for like $300 million. A Rothko work might sell for $300 million. I don't think Frank's work, since we're just entering, in a sense. We've been making art all this time, but because of racism and discrimination, of course, you don't see a lot of black art or know about a lot of black artists. But it's changing now. It's changing now. So this is a good time for you to work on your talent so that you can compete. And that's another reason why we're doing Splash. So that if you want to be an artist and you don't have the money to take art classes, you can come to Splash. And we provide the art supplies, the classes, and it's all free. Sometimes people think that if it's free, it's not worth anything. But this could be your future or your career. So you can see right off that I'm being influenced not only by Western art, but I'm being influenced by art made by African Americans. The art that you see of Frank's and Stanley's, that art that we have up is, you won't see a figure in it. But I just wanted to show you how I can mix that, or you can use what you learn from abstract art. All art is abstract. We have some images of Stanley's artwork, and you can see the size of some of those pieces, even though they're just blocks of color. When you stand in front of them, they kind of pull you in. Now I'm thinking, they pull you in, and it's the saturation of color that can pull you in. You don't have to make large paintings for that to happen. But in the 50s, the abstract expressionists, in order to find buyers, it was all about money. One good view of modern Western art is that the modern view, when I say modern, I'm thinking about the 50s, the start of abstract expressionism in America. America created that work, that style. That was all about money. But in history, art has never been all about money. It's about something else. That's why when you go back to the Renaissance and view works by Michelangelo, Raphael, and people like that, even though they made a lot of money because they were major artists, they painted religious pictures, okay? So the most powerful art in history, they are all religious. So that's in history. So because these artists wanted to survive, and you see artists doing that now. I'm not that type of artist who will do anything just to survive. But they created an art form called abstract expressionism. And they created that for their own survival. They got together. They did something. They actually artists getting together, that's rare. They actually got together and worked together and came up with a style that they would all adhere to, even though they adhered to those principles of abstract expressionism, and they created a market for themselves. And that's what really happened. So this style I'm using now is my style, but I'm still thinking about art history, what has gone before me. I've learned from what has gone before me. I'll say it a different way. But I've been doing this technique since 12th grade. Now, I was influenced by my art teacher, Charlie May Hurt, at Riverside High School. Riverside High School is now where Arts and Sciences is on 3rd Street. But originally it was a black high school called Riverside. And a lot of people, famous people, came out of that school. Artists that have done well in movies and things like that. Sports. And the reason why is because during segregation, we could only go to certain schools, Riverside and Howard. So, now, segregation had ended by the time I went to Riverside High School, but it was still basically an all-black school. So when I'm making art, I am not Rothko, and it's not my culture. Now Stanley Whitney, he has taught at university, and so has Frank. Now Frank's taught at a black school though. He taught at Howard University. So he was able to hold on to his heritage, I think, a little bit better than Stanley, in my opinion. And for me, it makes his art a little bit more powerful or more relevant to the black community. Afro-Cobra, let me give you a little bit more history. I was influenced by 2 members of Afro-Cobra, Wadsworth Gerald and Frank Smith, who actually, again, Wadsworth was a founder of Afro-Cobra. And I actually was a student of his. Now, Wadsworth, he didn't teach me. I was his assistant in teaching in Italy. So Wadsworth, he never taught me anything. Well, no, he taught me, but not officially. He didn't teach me officially. He showed me some techniques that I still can't do. So, oh yes, and in Chattanooga, I was influenced. I think the best artist, in my opinion, all this is my opinion. All artists have their opinions. To me, the most gifted artist ever out of Chattanooga was an artist named John Newsom. And he influenced me when I was from childhood, I'll say from 8 years old, 6 or 7 or 8 years old on up unto adulthood. And in all of the older churches in Chattanooga, you will see murals by John Newsom III. And I met him. I met his work years before I met him, but I met him when he went into the schools. That's why it's so important. Even if you're not accepted, if you have love in your heart, you want to share, you can make an impact. Making an impact is not all about the dollar bill. Because John Newsom, his work is like Picasso's. It's just that powerful. And I'm saying that after I've done years and years of study formally in school. I've yet to see anybody as talented as John Newsom III. And he's right here from Chattanooga, did not get, I mean, he's a genius artist on the level of Picasso, and he never got the recognition that he deserved. And I can say that after having studied and exhibited, in England and Italy and all that, and gotten the highest degree you can get in art, I can say unequivocally that John Newsom is the most talented artist of my time. From, out of Chattanooga. It's amazing when I go back and look at his work sometimes now, because we have his work in my home church that I grew up in. I go back and look at his work, it still amazes me how talented he was, how gifted he was. So for me, art is more than just trying to get a paycheck. And life is more than that to me too. So what I've done is, now Miss Charlie May Hurt taught me this technique. This is called tempera. I'm not going to use tempera, but you would use tempera, and you call it tempera batik. So I've painted with pastels, and now I'm going to add some watercolors. I've left some paper showing so that the watercolors will stick to the paper. So everywhere where there's paper, the watercolor is going to stick. Now I'm making this up as I go. So I'm using all these influences, but now I'm still doing my personal work. So that's why, just because, now kids, it's funny because a lot of young artists, especially by the time they get to high school, oh man, they're rebelling. And it's natural. Teacher wants them to do one thing, they want to do another. It's natural for an artist to rebel, okay? So, but if you have something to teach, they're going to get it. So I try not to change an artist, a young artist, but I want to just expose the young artists to more possibilities than they may be aware of. Let them know that there may be something that will help them grow. They may have something to learn. I'm still learning. My teacher, one of my good friends from UTC, who was my teacher, Jim Collins, I give a shout out to Jim Collins, very influential in my life, and I really do trust his vision and what he sees and his opinion about my art. And so I allow him to mentor me. So I still have mentors. I think everyone should have mentors. How are we going to do something new or different if we're always doing the same? Now you have to be brave. Right now, I like how this look. This don't need much, and it'll be very easy for me to mess this up. Does it look like something that I might do? Or later contemplating something? And, there's a lot of contemplation going on. Kids, contemplation, I'm talking about people are really worried because of the virus and everything. People are really struggling. And but we're going to make it through, and art might help us make it through. I really don't know. A lot of times I just try to find one color, just start somewhere. By the way, with these pastels, you can, with oil pastels, once the watercolor dry, you can go back on top of the watercolor. You notice how the watercolors is showing through the pastels? That's what we're trying to do. I'm looking for pink pastel. I need something here. I want it to be strong. I thought I would keep white there, and I may. Now I can let this painting go dark or keep it bright. I'm going to keep it bright. I could paint black over this whole thing and it would be very striking, but I don't want to do that in this case. You can also use color pencils with this. I found some pink. So you can see that all the curved lines that I have here and the running pyramids that I have in these shapes, that comes from Frank Smith. He used a lot of pyramids. I love it. And Afro-Cobra members use a lot of pyramids. Afro-Cobra members during that period, there were members in France as well. Well, here's the pink. So sometimes you have to just go ahead and do it. If it's a mistake, only person who knows about it is me. Mistakes can be good. We learn, hopefully we learn from mistakes in life. If you make a mistake, you did something mama told you not to do, you made a mistake, and then you had to get punished, hopefully you don't make that same mistake again. Some people, of course, they make the same mistake over and over and over again, and they go through a whole lot of, they make life a whole lot harder than it needs to be for them. So, nothing wrong with a mistake in art, just learn from them. So, the reason why I could do this so fast is because of my experience. And when you're my age, you'll be able to do it fast too. Just keep working, don't worry. But normally, this is a fast picture, and normally something like this might take me 2 or 3 hours, but and which is fast, which is still fast. Now I really want to play with the colors. I want to lay the colors down almost haphazardly, so I'm getting a very soft brown brush. This brush is very soft. It may not work, but I'm going to load it with water and start laying some colors down that, whatever comes to my mind. And the painting I have to watch the painting. Kids, you have to look at what happens. You get an idea, but you can't, you can't talk to people. I mean, it's even difficult for me talking to you doing this. But you have to watch. Rothko would sit in his studio for hours thinking looking at his work, thinking, what to do next. That's the creative process. Some people think that artists, I've heard all kinds of things. Artists are weird and all that kind of stuff. Artists are not weird. They're just different. We're free thinkers. And that's why I was saying, sometimes young kids, when they young, they began rebelling against their art teachers. That's normal because artists are free thinkers. But if you show them something that they could use, they're going to get it. It's okay, let me say this, to steal ideas in art. It's okay to steal ideas. Picasso did it all the time. And think about Picasso, most artists actually hated Picasso because he would steal your idea and do it better than you. Well, I'm talking about stealing ideas about art. I'm not talking about plagiarism. There's almost no plagiarism in art. No such thing almost. Now, if I just copy an artist's painting exactly, that would be plagiarism. But I'm talking about just stealing ideas. Or maybe I shouldn't use the word steal. Maybe taking ideas or gleaning ideas might be a better term. Yeah, I said appropriating. Yeah, before I'd say that. I use that word all the time. Yeah, I know. Just don't steal my ideas. Now, I steal ideas from kids all the time. Because kids, when a child is focused, and when they do their best, usually they make beautiful art, and that's why we do art shows. Okay, I'm going to put my first dark color on here. See if it works. Oops, I don't like how that look. Have to be very careful. I'm using purple. Have to be very careful because when purple runs into another paint, it's going to turn dark. Maybe too dark. See, it ran into yellow and turned brown. Speaking of brown, I'm going to put some brown in her face. No, actually, I'm going to put some black in her face. I'm going to get bold. If the black don't work, I'm going to put brown. I'm trying to get bold here. See, the black is beading up whenever it hits the pastels. That's what we want to happen. Now I'm going to try brown. The black might be too strong. See what brown looks like. See, I have less control with this soft brush, and I don't want a lot of control. I want it to look sort of to me, this looks like it ages the picture a little bit, It's something about this technique that I just like, and it works for me. Now, I may get a stiffer brush now. I'm going to get a stiffer brush to see if I can have a little bit more control over So I'm just brushing. This is kind of advanced here. I'm just laying the paint down now with this brush. The paint that beat it up, I'm sort of just brushing over it, laying it down. I have to be very careful, because right now, man, right now I want to do something really bold, but I don't know if I'm going to do it. I'm going to brush some more of this down. I'm going to do something real bold. I have 10 minutes to decide. My goal is to finish this. When you are working for a firm, a marketing firm or architectural firm or an art firm, a media firm, or you're just in school, you have deadlines. And it's important to be able to meet your deadlines. Because you don't meet the deadline, you could get fired. So we have a deadline today, 10 minutes. So I'm going to have to make I call it a corporate decision about my work, and be willing to live with the results. So you can hit and miss on art. And that's why we do more. We make art. We keep making art because we're trying to, every now and then, you'll do something and it'll be a masterpiece. And to me, a masterpiece is when there's no way to do it any better. Nobody could do it any better. That's my definition. That's my personal definition. I can't do this any better. This is the best I can do, and I don't think nobody else can do it any better. And that's rare for me to do a picture like that. So I might do 20, 30, 100 pictures, and then I might have an accident and do something that nobody could do any better. That's why I call it a masterpiece. But to me, seriously though, if you do your best, that's a masterpiece. Do the best you can do. Best you're capable of. Don't cheat yourself. So you can see the background. It's sort of like Stanley. I'm going to go back with some pastels. I'm going to try to dry this. See, I need to put some paint here. There's a lot of decision making going on. It just has to feel right when I look at it. Now, most of it feel right, but there's a part in here that don't feel right to me. And I think the only way to get it to where I want it might be to go back with pastels on top and complete it. In class, a lot of times, kids, you probably remember, you might do something, and I'll say, just do this a little bit here. I'm looking at what would make it, your picture, what could complete it, more successfully than what you have. And usually just a little something. So I'm going to dry this with my hair dryer. So I'm going to go back into the face a little bit. I don't care if the paint moves around. I have my hair dryer on high. I want the paint to move around. Now I'm going to use black if I have any black pastels, if I can find some black pastels. I don't know if I have any black. If not, I'm going to have to use another darker color. I can also go back with crayons. So this has become a mixed media piece. I don't have black pastels. That might be a good thing, so I'm going to go back with, see if brown works. See what blue does. I'm just trying to get it dark in here in his face. You know what? Blue works, and I wonder if purple will work too. Purple over blue may do what I want it to. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to get some contrast here in the face. I want you to experiment with this technique. See what you think about it. But remember, we're doing this just to show you how you can be influenced by artists, even though their work is not like yours. We can still learn. You can learn from everybody. Now, I painted this figure very loosely. And I'm actually going to, I just had an idea. I wonder what some, either white paint or white pastels might work. I'm going to try white paint first if I have any. I need somewhere to place my white paint where it's not going to get dirty, so I'll just get a piece of paper. We just want some plain white paint. I really want to we've been talking about painting, and this class completes our theme as far as the modern art, the contemporary art, abstract art. And I wanted to share with you some artists that maybe you never heard of. But we need to get back to drawing. You see how valuable drawing is? It don't have to be super realistic. It's still valuable to be able to approximate your figure. Now, I kept my figure very loose. And some of you, your art is going to be loose anyway, and that's a good thing. So I'm kind of going back, I'm putting in some little highlights. I just want to, because some of my students, some of you are a little bit older, especially since we've been online. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about the skeleton. And I'm thinking that's what we're going to do. next time. I've been waiting to do that, chomping at the bits. And since we're here, we're online, there's a lot of classes. Why not use COVID as take advantage of learning how to become a better artist. See how these highlights just brought that face out a little bit? That's what I want to do. I'm going to bring this hand out just a little bit with the white. I'm laying the white on thick. I put some white in her scarf that's on her head. This is part of the scarf too, how it's tied. Yeah. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign the piece over here. You sign your painting and put your age on it. And this has been a lot of fun. This is Charlie Newton with Splash Live Arts class. And I hope that you enjoyed this session. And I hope that you'll join me on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 4 to 5. No, I'm sorry, from 5 to 6. Every Tuesday and Thursdays from 5 to 6. And I hope that you will join me next Saturday from 11 to 12. Until then, remember, art is for everyone. Bye-bye.